Everyone. Yesterday we saw how naturally occurring soil bacterium, gram-negative pathogenic bacterium, agrobacterium, can be a natural genetic engineer because it transfers a portion of its DNA, which is known as the transfer DNA or tDNA, from the bacterium to the plant cell and is permanently integrated into the plant genome. Depending upon the pathogenicity, there have two species of agrobacterium have been identified. One is known as Agrobacterium tumefaciens, causing tumor formation, and the other one is known as Agrobacterium rhizogenes. So yesterday we studied about the Agrobacterium rhizogenes, the molecular basis of transformation, how the RI plasmid looks like, what are the rol genes, how many open reading frames are present in these rol genes, and how these rol genes are responsible for root morphology. Now today what we are going to do is from our own college laboratory. We will be taking certain examples to show how we can use this as a system to produce different metabolites. We will not be restricting ourselves only to secondary metabolites. We will also look into some primary metabolites. A large number of plants have been transformed using the Agrobacterium rhizogenes system. However, at the end of this chapter, you can also look up at the literature, see which plants have root-derived fine chemicals or which plant are economically important in terms of the roots that they produce, and how you can design an experiment to carry out certain studies. Now, these studies need not be limited only for extraction and analysis of fine chemicals. It can be enhancing production. It can be standardizing a protocol in terms of media, the amount of oxygen which is available, or a bioreactor design to scale up these root cultures. So let's have a look. As you can see, all these studies have been carried out. A large number of plants have been transformed, and we had a wide range of root cultures, but with the cost being involved in maintaining these cultures, now we have only few of them. Now, the simple technique which we used is the one proposed by Ooms and his colleagues, and that had to make a wound on aseptic seedlings and smear that wound with the actively growing Agrobacterium rhizogenes culture. Within a week or so, maximum 10 days from the wound site, the roots will emerge. Since the portion of the plant which is inoculated is above the culture medium, you should not allow it to dry immediately. You have to dissect that portion and put it on an antibiotic medium. Cefotaxime is also widely used antibiotic, but we have been using carbenicillin or ampicillin. Now this passaging is very important. Otherwise, if the bacteria becomes resistant, then no way you can get clean cultures and you cannot proceed with further experiments with contaminated cultures. Now these roots can be maintained for a long period of time on a MS solid medium without any phytohormones. For experiments, we use a MS basal medium. Now, yesterday I showed you a video in which you saw how these roots can be subcultured and how you can maintain them in liquid medium. I don't know how many of you observed, there was a very beautiful plug. Instead of using non-adsorbent plug, they had used sponge. Now this has got two advantages, that sponges can be designed to the size of the Erlenmeyer flask that you are using, and they can be washed and autoclaved. Now what does the non-adsorbent cotton or sponge do? It also acts like a filter so that only sterile air, if at all it passes into the flask, there will be no contamination. So whatever oxygen is present is the one which is present in the head space, and that because you are putting it on a gyratory shaker or a rotary shaker, oxygen gets dissolved. And solubility or oxygen is an important factor for mass transfer. More about that we'll be studying when we are talking about scaling up of these root cultures. Now, how do you confirm that the roots are indeed transformed? You may get your normal, see, wounding may also produce roots, isn't it? You have done a lot of propagation. So if you wound, if it's rainy season, that means in moisture. In fact, 2,4-D is also known as a wound hormone. So there are hormones which are present, which are essential for the healing process, because the wound has to heal, and thereby you require these hormones which are triggered as a result of wounding. So you may also get roots because of wounding, but you are interested only in the transformed roots or in the hairy roots. So how do you confirm that they are indeed transformed? By doing certain tests. One simple is morphological feature. But morphological feature cannot be accepted if you're trying to publish a paper. Now, what did I say? Morphological feature, profusion of lateral roots. Now, what is the difference between a lateral root and a root hair? Very simple. Lateral roots are endogenous in origin. They arise from the pericycle, the cambial portion, and that is what gives rise to the lateral root. Whereas root hair, or they arise from the periblemma, or the external layer, which otherwise you call as epidermis, but in roots it is not called as epidermis, because this gives out root hair. So there is a difference between root hair and lateral roots. So lateral roots are endogenous in origin. Now, normally, what do you think function of root hair? Now, root hair can be for otherwise. They are meant for aeration and also for facilitating the absorption of nutrients from the soil. Now, in case of hairy roots, because the roots are submerged in liquid medium, the root hair do not provide the function, or the root hair are not metabolically very active. Very simple, a simple experiment of treating the root with an electron acceptor. You have done TTC, isn't it? So similarly, there's one more, nitro blue tetrazolium, NBT. So when you stain the roots, the portion which rapidly takes up the stain is the one which is metabolically very active. So when you stain these hairy root, the tip region becomes, and very beautiful vibrant colors you get. It immediately takes up the stain because that is made up of meristematic region. So because it is made up of meristem, that is the portion which is metabolically very active. And the last one to get stained are the root hair, indicating that you can also use a technique, cytochemical localization of respiratory function in different parts of the root. However, having said that, the first feature by means of which you can confirm transformation is morphological feature. Second one is test for opines. Okay, so you can test for the presence of these very unique amino acid derivatives which are known as opines, and opines are a peculiarity of a produce which is made only by the what you can say agrobacterium. So let us look at the opine. So as I mentioned yesterday also, the RI plasmids are mainly classified into two classes depending upon the opines that are formed. So they are either called as the agropine type or they are known as the manopine type. Now, how do you localize opine? You can localize opine by carrying out a technique of paper electrophoresis. All right. So opines, because they are derived from amino acids, so any stain which you use for localizing amino acid can also be used for this. However, the separation that you're carrying out is by using a paper instead of a gel. So you are going to use the paper either in a horizontal manner or in a vertical manner, and you use a buffer which will serve as an electrolyte to conduct the current, and as a result of the charge, these opines will migrate, and by using appropriate staining, which can be either anhydrine or silver nitrate, you can localize opines. If opines are present, it means the roots are transformed, and if you don't get any stain or no opine, that means the roots are not transformed. As I mentioned, the confirmatory test is to localize the tDNA by using a probe, which can be either chemiluminescent or it can be a radioactive probe. And that technique is known as Southern hybridization. However, with the availability of PCR, okay, so you can amplify. So what you can have a forward or a reverse primer and amplify one particular gene. So I've taken this picture from an article, and I've also cited the article wherein they have confirmed the transformation using the PCR technique. Now, once you amplify the DNA, how do you analyze or how do you see the product of amplification? By using electrophoresis technique. All right. So very simple. What they have done, they have either amplified ROL A gene or ROL B gene or ROL C gene or ROL D gene, Ver-G gene. Okay, that is also important. And the genes which are responsible for overproduction of auxin, AUX1 and AUX2. The information which is given in the bracket tells you the size of DNA. As you know that in electrophoresis, when you load the sample, the well, where is the well? DNA is, what is the charge on DNA? Anybody, you can even put it on the chat box. What is the charge on DNA? Negative. So it will move towards positive electron, right? Smaller the fragment, it will travel faster. Larger the fragment, it will travel slow. But how would you know? You have studied that. In the first lane, what they have put is a ladder. So what is a ladder? It is a DNA which is digested with digestive enzymes, and as a result, you get different fragments. So these fragments, the smallest fragment is about 107 base pair, and the largest fragment is about 774 base pair. Now, why you have used this ladder? Because all the DNA that you want to localize fall within this range. Then when you're separating, that means you have got the PCR. So what you have done is you have isolated DNA from the transformed roots, and then you've added primer so as to selectively localize. Say, for example, if I want to localize ROL A gene, okay, then it should be about 107 base pair, and you can see in lane 8, you can see the band. That means this is transformed. If you see lane 12, there is no band. What does it mean? It means that this root is not transformed. Okay, now 582, a very sharp band you can see in lane 10 and lane 7, and 582 is amplified ROL C gene or that fragment of DNA. Do you have any difficulty? So how you do is you use an agarose gel, you make the sample of DNA. First you may amplify the DNA, and for loading you use sample DNA, bromophenol blue as a marker, and then you also add glycerol, which will help the sample to sink in the web. Then you apply, you have the positive and negative electrodes. DNA being negatively charged will move towards the positive electrode. Now for visualizing the DNA, as you know that DNA cannot be seen as such, you have to stain the gel by using ethidium bromide. So you can either add ethidium bromide in the gel or in the buffer, or later on after the run is completed, you can stain the gel with ethidium bromide. Word of caution that while using ethidium bromide, gloves are essential, protective glasses are essential, because ethidium bromide is a mutagenic agent. Now when you observe the gel using a UV trans illuminator, then fragments of DNA will be observed as bright fluorescent bands. These can be photographed. As you can see, these are all photographs used using a CCD camera. How did you get the size of DNA? By plotting the graph of this ladder. So for the ladder, you know the size and the distance traveled. So by plotting it on a semi-log paper, you can get a standard graph, and for the remaining, you only know the distance traveled, so you calibrate with the standard graph. So confirmation nowadays is done using a polymerase chain reaction to localize a specific DNA either present in the T left or the T right border. So we quickly revise why we like these hairy roots. You are bypassing the plant. So you can just grow isolated roots in culture, either in small flask or in medium-sized flask or in large bioreactors. They are extremely rapid in growth, and the medium required is a phytohormone-free medium. Large number of lateral branches, profusion of root hair, resulting in high biomass production. Very important, these root cultures offer an alternative in terms of stable metabolite production in subsequent generation. What do you mean by a generation? Say I've grown the roots for 15 days. Then you saw yesterday in the video that it was subculture. So that will become first generation. Again, it will grow to form a mass of root. Then I will take little bit and subculture it again. So I get second generation. In that manner, every 15 days, I'll have a generation. So in a month, I'll have 2 generations, and in a year, I'll have 24 generations. Is that clear? Even after that many generations, the metabolite that I'm looking for remains stable. So these roots, in terms of biomass accumulation and in terms of metabolite production, they are very stable. And when we'll be talking about scaling up, we shall be also telling about the reactor design for these organ cultures. All right, so let's see the wide range of applications which are possible using hairy root culture, and our own laboratory, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about these very areas using specific examples. Okay, so phytochemical, anyway, you know that production of secondary metabolite, almost all the roots wherein the metabolite is root derived has been transformed using this technique. So it can be in terms of artemisinin production or camptothecin, serpentine, agmacillin, hyoscyamine, scopolamine, many secondary metabolites which are either synthesized in the root or they are accumulated in the root. Then there has been a renewed interest in macromolecules like proteins. So these proteins can be a horseradish peroxidase, which we shall be talking about, or the Chinese cucumber known as Trichoxanthus kirlobi. The roots contain a ribosome inactivating protein which has been considered as an off-the-counter drug for treatment of HIV patients. So it has antiviral property. The same thing can also be extrapolated to Mirabilis gelapa. So it is called as Mirabilis MIP. That is also an antiviral protein. Then you can use Agrobacterium rhizogenes for molecular breeding. As you know that Agrobacterium rhizogene is also a naturally occurring genetic engineer. There are many plants which can propagate through roots, right? So you can use this Agrobacterium rhizogenes for transferring certain genes into the plant so that you get transformed transgenic plants. So molecular breeding. Then another important area which has been viewed with a great sense of optimism is a phytoremediation. So you can use these root cultures for phytoremediation. Then you can use the roots, you can provide with labeled compounds and trace the biochemical pathway. You can use these root cultures for studying uptake of minerals, that means for root physiology. Then you have heard about edible vaccines and therapeutic proteins. So genetically engineered root cultures can also be a production system for these therapeutic proteins. So let's have a look what we have been doing for last 2 decades. Now I've taken examples from the work being done in our college laboratory. So the first plant, and as I mentioned, you always work with plants which are more amenable and which would give you positive result. So it is a fascinating fact that you also correlate with observations. All of you know Jendu, marigold. And you've seen farmers are very smart. They grow these marigolds around the field like border. Why? Because the roots of these plants produce sulfur containing compounds known as thiophenes. Among them, one of the thiophene known as alpha-terthalin is agrochemical. I'll come to that a little later. Ashwagandha, in recent time, ashwagandha, mulethi, then your glycyrrhiza, then giloy, Tinospora, this have got a real great importance, whether it is in the form of a tea or it is in the form of a kada, and you say you need immunomodulator to fight against the COVID-19. But ashwagandha is also considered as Indian ginseng, mainly for its immunomodulatory properties. Then pagal ki dawa, Rolfia serpentina. It has got very strong alkaloids which has cardiac properties. Serpentine, ajmaslin. These are the alkaloids which are present. Again, a very popular drug in Ayurvedic system of medicine. Rubia cordifolia, manjishta. Again, very popular, used in many skin diseases. And what we have studied is alizari. And finally, my all-time favorite, the beautiful colorant betalains present in Beta vulgaris roots. Now, if you have any question in between, please put in the chat box. Then I would get back to you. Now, as I said, Tagetes petula and Tagetes erecta, very simple. You get the seeds in the market and there are many varieties. You have those yellow big ones. Then you have those small maroon with yellow tinge. So there are African marigolds, there are French marigolds. So there are different varieties of marigolds. And in India, marigolds have special place. Almost each and every festival you have marigolds. But these plants are very amazing. See, the marigold flowers also provide with a natural colorant. So this colorant, if you add in the feed of chicken, the egg yolk will have a darker color as compared to what they have. But in addition to that, as I mentioned, it is a very important natural pesticide. So what we did was, or rather, my first postdoc work was on Tagetes pitula, and you can see the reference which I've cited here. I had the good fortune of working very early when this hairy root culture was just beginning, like people were just starting. And I also worked with a pioneer in that group known as Flores. If you look at the work, Flores, he was the one who thought that these root cultures can be exploited, and plant roots which otherwise are ignored can be used as chemical factories. So you can surface sterilize the seeds, germinate them in basal medium, and you inoculate the hypocotyl region with, we had a very nice strain of Agrobacterium rhizogenes, TR105, very virulent, almost everything would get transformed, and within 10 days, Asteraceae member and Solanaceae members are amazing. Within 10 days, you get profusion of root hair, and then you can set up, or rather you can establish root cultures within 2 months. And a large number of experiments were conducted, and we were interested in looking at the alpha terphthalate content in these root cultures, which are nematicidal property. So all these compounds are phototoxic, and they bring about membrane disruption, resulting in killing of these nematodes, which otherwise cause a lot of harm to crop plants. Okay, so thiophene accumulation can also be enhanced by using biotic elicitors, which you already have studied. So the biotic elicitor which we used are fungal derived. So fungal mycelia were grown, autoclaved, and the extract was concentrated, and when it was added, then there was a twofold increase in thiophene accumulation. The second material, and almost everything is published. This publication has come in a journal known as Indian Drugs, Rubia cordifolia, Madar, Indian Madar, coloring agent called as Manjishta, and it is widely used and an astringent. Many of the skin preparation, they contain Manjishta. So roots contain anthraquinone. It's antibacterial, astringent, antioxidant, and if you look at the literature, it is a very good blood purifier. Now, the reason for choosing, see, when you choose a system, you also want to look at the availability of facilities in your own laboratory. You have to choose the application of that system. So the reason for choosing a Rubia cordifolia was you could screen by visual looking. Because the roots were colored yellow, orange in color, you could easily screen them and select elite clones. So as you can see, from the wounded region, you can see these roots coming out. And then what you do is you make a cut here, you make a cut here, and you put this segment on an antibiotic containing medium. Within no time, you get these proliferated roots. You only take the tip portion, which are cleaner, because ultimately you don't want any bacteria to be there, and you grow them in liquid medium. As you can see, this is the view which is showing that the entire flask is full of roots. So rapid growth in phytohormone free medium. So then you, as compared to callus, see the amount of callus is so less in the same period, but this entire flask is full of root cultures. It's very easy to analyze alizarin also. You can use a simple TLC or an HPTLC technique, derivatize it, and you can analyze the content. If you have a densitometer, you can quantify the amount of alizarin present. Then, as I mentioned, the next material, or rather Dr. Himanshu Davda, his thesis is on Withania somnifera, ashwagandha. Why Withania somnifera? Roots are medicinally important. They biosynthesize and accumulate alkaloids, and they have immunomodulatory property. Very often we think only in terms of the alkaloid content, but the immunomodulatory property is because of the unique polysaccharides which are accumulated by these roots of ashwagandha, and therefore they have these properties. And as I mentioned, many of the herbal plants are grown, or there are centers for growing these plants. So there is a place in Madhya Pradesh known as Mandsaur where they are grown. It's known more for poppy cultivation, but they have a field established, and there are many elite varieties of ashwagandha, and they have ashwagandha and Rauwolfia serpentina. So seeds were procured from Mandsaur, and we established root cultures from different varieties. So therefore, somewhere you will see JA24 depending upon the variety from which it has been established. Now, ashwagandha, because it belongs to family Solanaceae, experiments were carried out to find out the transformation using different explants. So you had cotyledon in the explant, you had hypocotyl, you had stem sections, you had roots, and almost everything could be transformed using the virulent strain of Agrobacterium rhizogenes. Now, if you recall, I made one term that, or rather I told a term known as the lac geotropism. And the roots are plagiotropic, or they show plagiotropism. What does it mean? This is a beautiful demonstration that you can see these roots coming above the liquid medium and growing above, that means negatively geotropic, right? And because of the root hair are so much, they look like cotton, right? And you can see that entire flask is full of roots, and these represent the old roots, and these are newly emerged roots. They are white because they are above and they have ample oxygen. Now, this is one fact which is of high value when you are going to think about a reactor design. Because if you have a mass like this, what will happen is these peripheral area will get enough oxygen or aeration. But in the middle portion where it is becoming dense, though there will be a core where oxygen will become limited. So as a result, here the cells will start dying and it will become necrotic. So as a result, what will happen, it will start becoming brown, and you already know that if there is media browning, then it can be a big problem and you have to solve that problem. Having said that, a shake flask experiment is very important so that you can design scaling up, or you can design reactors to scale up and to overcome the problems which you have observed in lab scale experiments. Now we come to a very nice material, that is beta vulgaris. Now, I don't know whether you really are curious or not. I often wondered and looked at the literature. Why beetroot should be colored? It is in the underground part of the plant, so it has no role in pollination. But if you look at this, or you survey the entire literature, this particular nitrogenous water-soluble pigment is restricted to one particular order, Chenopodiales. So whether it is Cactaceae, Amaranthaceae, Nyctaginaceae, Chenopodiaceae, Portulacaceae, all these families, they have betalains. So the families in which betaline are present, they will not have anthocyanin. So these two pigments are mutually exclusive. Now, anthocyanins, flavonoids, different pathway. Betalains are, the precursor is DOPA, and if the pathway goes towards the yellow-orange beta-xanthin, or if the pathway can go towards red-violet beta-cyanin. So if you go abroad or you have an opportunity, you also get something called as golden beet. So that golden beet is because of the yellow predominance of beta-xanthin. And the violet, or the ones which we get in our market, is the red-violet pigment being more predominant, known as betaline. Based on these experiments, many of our research work has percolated into undergraduate syllabus. So that is also your contribution, that when you standardize experiments in your laboratory, then you can contribute to curriculum design. So you might have done in your lower BSc extracting beet pigment and studying the absorption pattern. So one peak you get in around 440 to 450, that is for beta xanthin, and you get a bigger peak around 530, 35, which is for beta cyanide. You can also do a column chromatography and separate the beta xanthin and beta cyanide. Then why hairy root? In hairy root, you can have clonal selection. So you can have hairy roots which produce only beta xanthin, hairy root producing only beta cyanide. So large number of experiment, almost there were 2 PhD students. My own work as a postdoc, including scaling up, was done with beta vulgaris for several reasons. Besides its economic importance as a natural colorant, there were many basic questions which were answered. And as I told you, betalains are stored in the vacuole. Therefore, young emerging or the root hair will not have any color. Meristematic cells will not have any color. Look at the Knorr soup packet and read the label. They'll say beet powder, so that it will provide the required color. Many ice cream mixes, milkshake, juice mixes, they contain beet powder as a natural colorant. And you all know that natural colorants are more preferred as compared to synthetic colorant, because natural does not require any FDA approval. Now, let's see how, have you seen the fruit of wheat? It's a carceral. Inside there are about 8 seeds. So you have to germinate them and see the beautiful color of the seedling. Then you inoculate it, and when the roots emerge, they're all white in color, right? Because they are all meristematic, there is no vacuole, there is no biosynthesis of betaline and no storage. And here also you can look at the tips. They're all without any pigment, because as I said, there are no vacuoles. Now this very fact of storage in the vacuole has been used to bring the pigments out in the surrounding solution. So here you can see the matte, and as you can see, the yellow being more predominant, or beta xanthin being more predominant. Now, what type of experiment design? Did I not mention to you that production of secondary metabolite can be growth associated or it can be growth dissociated? I put up this slide from our own publication, wherein we modified or we changed the media phosphate content. And when you alter the media phosphate content, there is a change in the amount of betalains being accumulated. So as you can see here, this graph is with open circle is in terms of dry weight accumulated per gram per liter. And this graph is for the amount of pigment which is accumulated per gram per dry weight. Okay. Now, as you can see in the logarithmic phase, there is accumulation of betaline, but once the root achieves the stationary phase, there is a rapid decline or the pigments get degraded. So the best time to have maximum production is in first 12 days. See, but at the same time, when you are talking about volumetric productivity, you are starting with some inoculum. So you have started with say 1 gram in terms of dry weight as an inoculum. So that will not be sufficient. You want the biomass to be accumulated. At the same time, you also want pigment accumulation. So you have to do a growth study, harvest what you can say flask at regular intervals, measure the amount of biomass accumulated, and Very simple for betalain. You have to just extract in water, centrifuge, use the filtrate and do a spectrophotometric reading, and you can find out, or rather you can quantify the amount of pigment which has been produced. So as you can see here, you can see the growth curve for biomass, and this is the curve for pigment accumulation. So all the studies, and it was a good system because you need not grow the roots for a very long period of time. Maximum period you grew them for 12 days. So one study would be completed in 12 days. Now this is again, as I mentioned from our article, where we use pH. If you recall, I said that alkaloids are trapped in the vacuole by a mechanism known as ion trapping. So we felt that since the betalain is accumulated in the vacuole, what if we alter the pH? And if when we alter the pH, the charge will change. As a result, they will come out. But here, the pH which we used was little harsh. It was a non-physiological pH, which was 2. When you're using a pH of this low, you're also going to damage the cells. We didn't want to do that. So we gave the pH treatment as a pulse. That means we transferred it to a culture medium with a very low pH and then immediately put it back into fresh medium so that damage is minimum. And this graph tells you the duration of pH pulse and the amount of betalain which is accumulated. And as you can see, almost double the amount of betalain could be brought into the surrounding medium, from where it can be recovered very easily. At the same time, you could grow again the biomass by adding fresh medium. So when you are adding fresh medium, again those roots will start growing because they have those meristems which are capable of renewed growth. So this experiment was very interesting for 2-3 reasons. One, you could use a system for permeabilizing and recovery. And second, you could design a system for reusing the biomass over an extended period of time. And third, you could do a simple test like your TTC to find out whether viability has been retained or not. So by using one system, you can design several experiments. Now, betalain content can also be increased by using elicitors like methyl jasmonate. You have learned about it. Methyl jasmonate are gaseous elicitors, and these bring about an enhancement of betalain accumulation. Now we come to a very interesting plant known as horseradish. Now horseradish, the botanical name is Armoraceae rusticana. I've seen recently in Nature Basket. Otherwise, it was not available in India because it doesn't grow in our country. It's a temperate plant. That means it needs very, very low climatic condition, and the roots are very like the way radish is. But this is known as a horseradish because the roots are much bigger and they contain more amount of fibers. Abroad, they make a dip. The way you have a mustard sauce, or similarly, they also have a horseradish dip, which is very pungent. See, the moment you cook radish, you get that isothiocyanates and sulfur-containing compounds, very strong smell. Similarly, horseradish also has a very strong smell and it is very pungent. But that pungency, people start developing a taste due to which it is used as a spread. Botanical name is Armoraceae rusticana and it belongs to family Brassicaceae or Cruciferae. It has medicinal importance and it is a source of a very important protein known as HRP or horseradish peroxidase. And horseradish peroxidase along with alkaline phosphatase is an important reagent in ELISA. ELISA diagnostic kits. Now let's see. Now, Arborescea rusticana is another very beautiful system. So we are moving from secondary metabolite to macromolecule accumulation by these root cultures. And here I'm taking an example of accumulation of a very important protein, that is peroxidase enzyme. And you know that the enzyme peroxidase has large number of application besides that in diagnostic kit. So when you read the literature, you come to a very interesting facts. So there was an article which said you clean up the contaminated water using plants. Oh, well, oh, what are these plants? And when you looked up, what they did was they sliced horseradish pieces and added to contaminated water. I'll come to that a little later again. Okay, then, and they found that the water was cleaned up. So horseradish is an important source of a very important enzyme, peroxidases, which belongs to the category of oxidoreductases. Now, this enzyme peroxidases is amazing because it can utilize many substrate as a substrate, and it can be broken down. So phenols, then aromatic amines, then you have many of the dyes, coloring agents, synthetic coloring agents, which are a headache for the many chemical industries. They can be decolorized by this particular enzyme. Now, because the plant is not available, what do? You micropropagate so that you have your own plants available to you as and when you require. And these micropropagated plants you establish in basal medium for some time and then use for transformation studies. So by inoculation, either you can use the petiole or you can use the leaf. You can inoculate with virulent strain of Agrobacterium rhizogenes, and it's amazing system. Within no time you get these hairy roots. See, when you do experiments, from one experiment another experiment comes. So initially when we were growing these roots, we found that all these roots started producing small shoots. That means there was spontaneous regeneration. And we were wondering, we never wanted the shoots, we wanted only the roots to be grown. Then we found that the moment they are exposed to light, morphogenesis, photomorphogenesis occurs and you get spontaneous shoot regeneration. So what next? You wrap them with black paper and do not expose them to light because you want only roots, you are not interested in shoots. But this could be a very good technique of regenerating large number of shoots from small amount of root culture. So the enzyme peroxidase can again, that can be used in experimental system for various experiments which you can design. Here, one of our students also localized the enzyme using histochemical technique. So you don't need very sophisticated material, a microscope and a good brain. From that also you can do some good experimental work. So you can localize and see where are the enzymes present more. And from that you can draw important conclusion that the enzyme peroxidase also plays an important role in cell wall formation. So let's see here what type of experiments and what type of conclusion you draw. These are different strains of Agrobacterium, the site of inoculation, how many wounds you've made, and then within how much time you could get these root cultures. Some very good publication, including in Springer, has been written by one of my PhD students. I always say she did the best work, Mugdha Ambadkar. You might have also attended her lecture when she spoke about good writing research paper, and she worked on this enzyme and did some very good work on dye decolorization. So this graph shows a comparison. So this plant has peroxidases in all the parts. whether it's a leaf, the petiole. Obviously, the storage root are the main portion, but here we are comparing with hairy roots. So, and another important thing is that the enzyme comes out in the external medium. It is stored in the internal medium and it also is secreted in the external medium, or you get as an extracellular enzyme. So you can design the experiments accordingly. So you can see methyl orange, there are two azo dyes which were used. One is Bismarck brown. Both these have been published. So methyl orange, you can see before treatment and after treatment with the enzyme peroxidase. Similarly, Bismarck brown before and after treatment, and as you can see, the intensity of color has become very less. Now, what type of industrial application does it have? If you remember, the moment a chemical company throws its wastewater, immediately, if it is colored, people start screaming that water has become green in color, water has become blue in color, or water has become orange in color. So it raises a red flag, and environmentally it causes toxicity issues. So you want system for decolorization of these dyes. Having said that, even though peroxidases are an alternative solution, there is a long way to go, because right now it is a synthetic method, Fenton reaction, which is used for dye decolorization, and that is more economical and proven. You have alternative, and as I mentioned, cleaning up of an area using plants. All you do when you chop up the roots and put, then these roots are contain peroxidase, they will bring about dye decolorization. So Arborescea rusticana, important source of horseradish peroxidase, used as a which produces a chromogenic product in ELISA test. Then the hairy roots of Cucumis sativus kakadi, it also contains large amount of peroxidase, which can utilize aromatic amines and phenols as a substrate. So they can bring about utilization of these phenols, which otherwise can be toxic. And we will correlate this when we'll be coming to the part of phytoremediation. Okay, are you with me? Anybody? Are
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Or you are saturated? Let me know. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Or I can give you a break for 10 minutes. I want to finish this today. What do you want?
Ma'am, continue, please.
Thank you so much. So, same those hairy roots of horseradish peroxidase can also be used an experimental model for demonstrating biotransformation. You might have again see any preserved food material. BHC and BHA are normally used antioxidants. So in food preservation, these are commonly used antioxidant. And then these antioxidants, the food material, if they are preserved and they have the enzyme peroxidase, then what will happen? They will be biotransformed to, still toxicity studies are pending, to a yellow colored compound known as stilbenoquinone. That means care should be taken whenever you are using any antioxidant as a preservative in food. So this was demonstrated by growing these root cultures and adding BHC and BHA, and because it was visual, yellow colored formation, which could be measured spectrophotometrically. So you can also design some experiments to demonstrate biotransformation in the laboratory. Then we come to the next part. Propagation of forest trees. Populus deltoides aspen. And if you happen to go along the north, the moment you cross Noida, you'll just see fields of poplar. And if you are with a tour, he will say, Madam, cricket ka bat hai na, ye is plant se banta hai. That means they are more aware about the utility of this tree. Why do they grow this tree? Very rapid in growth. Within no time, it will become productive or it will grow. And it is very straight. Okay, Salicaceae is the family. The wood is softwood. Entire cultivation matchstick factory would go and say, okay, this much I need, and they will buy it directly. So the farmer gets a benefit because his produce will be sold to important companies like those which manufacture cricket bats, matchstick, plywood, and paper. Now, again, see, it's your nature, you have to study. Well, I saw an article which said Kanban paper. I said, oh, wow, what is this Kanban paper? So this Kanban paper is more expensive, but it is eco-friendly. And in Thailand, what do the farmers do? Along the rice field, at the periphery, they grow these trees. And they make paper only from the trees which have been grown in their area. That means they are not cutting like eucalyptus or bamboo or anything from the forest. That means they are not disturbing the natural biodiversity. What they have done, they are having a field. In the field, they have marked an area to grow these rapid growing trees, and they have a paper manufacturing unit nearby so that it becomes a self-sustaining unit. Now, these trees are very amazing, popular, because their rate of transpiration is very high, due to which they are very good as phytoremediation system. Because when they are transpiring, large amount of things will be taken up and accumulated in the leaves. So obviously then you can have phytoextraction and other things, but from a large area you are concentrating that contaminant to a small area or to a small region. So it is also looked upon as a very good system for phytoremediation. Then another interesting part of this plant, and if you happen to go to Hiranandani, again observation, they have planted some populus. And if you look on the ground, from the root suckers, small plantlets will be coming out. What does it show? It shows that this plant or this tree can be propagated through roots. You can extrapolate that knowledge that if you have roots, hairy roots can be regenerated to produce important or other mass propagated to give important forest trees. Then again you think more and you will think that, oh well, if I can get hairy roots, they can be transformed using Agrobacterium rhizogenes, then can I use these Agrobacterium rhizogenes as a genetic engineer? I will put some gene of interest so that I get a transgenic popular plant which can grow in a hostile environment. So that is what I shall be sharing with you in another 5 minutes. So we use this plant, and for that we are thankful to DBT for providing us with very good funding, and the title was Transformation of Forest Trees Using Agrobacterium Rhizogenes. So you have explant material inoculated with Agrobacterium rhizogenes, and you get multiple shoots, and these multiple shoots are they show the morphology alike to your natural ones. Only thing, you have some little bit of internodal growth problem which you can overcome by supplying gibberellins, and you can get mass propagation of plants. Next, we got a vector containing a gene for salt resistance known as osmotin gene. I'm very sure when you learned the topic of osmotic stress, you might have learned that tobacco cells, when grown in low concentration of sodium chloride, start expressing a gene which is known as an osmotin gene. Why is it called as osmotic gene? Because it confers the cell with a capability to survive in a saline environment. How can a plant survive in saline environment? By increasing its osmolyte content. One important osmolyte, I'm very sure you'll recall, is proline. So how do I find out? I will grow these transformed plants. You do the usual thing. Like I localize whether it is really transformed or not using a PCR. Then I will grow them in sodium chloride, different concentration, to see whether they are surviving or not. And then analyze the proline content. As compared to control plants, the proline content will be more. Now, since the plants are genetically engineered, they will have a selectable marker, and in this case, it is a marker for kanamycin resistance. So, Populus deltoides leaves can be co-cultivated with Agrobacterium rhizogenes. You get transformed roots. You can use it as a regeneration system, or you can use a genetically engineered Agrobacterium rhizogene to clone a gene of interest. So our laboratory, it cloned osmotic gene, which was also a kind gift from Dr. Bansal from IARI, New Delhi. And then you confirm transformation by using PCR, and then you measure the proline content. However, to take them to field, you require special permission. You can grow them only in confined area because it is genetically modified. Now we come to almost the last part, that how you can do what is known as rhizoremediation. So what does it mean? The rhizosphere of the root is in contact with a large number of microorganisms which colonize. And these microorganisms can bioremediate, or they can clean up the soil. And the upper part of the plant brings about what is known as phytoremediation. Now, what was conceived as an experimental design was, what if you colonize the popular hairy roots with bioremediating bacteria? I repeat it again. What you're doing is you are transforming Populus with Agrobacterium rhizogenes, and you get hairy roots. Then you colonize these hairy roots with microorganisms which are capable of bioremediation. Then you can have a bioreactor design wherein it can be used for rhizoremediation. But suppose you want this to happen in the field, you have to regenerate these plants, and these plants will then be a good system for rhizoremediation as well as phytoremediation. Okay, so the same plant material which was used for regenerating forest trees or transforming forest trees was extrapolated to carry out one more function, that is rhizoremediation. So the way it functions is enzymes are produced by these roots and the bacteria when they are bioremediating. As a result, they are capable of utilizing these substances, which can be either organic in nature or they can be inorganic, and then they will break it down. If they are being transported, then they can be either accumulated in case of hyperaccumulators, or they can be degraded. So that is what happens in phytoremediation. Now, to compile the whole thing, I've got a very nice article, and also I mentioned that hairy root cultures can also be a very good production system for in vitro mycorrhiza inoculum. So carrot roots have been colonized with mycorrhizal fungus, and they've been scaled up in bioreactors under experiment has been done in Tata Energy Research Institute, localized in Delhi, TERI. So why I keep giving you the names of institute, because you can look for career opportunities or you can look for research projects. So they can phytoremediate or rhizoremediate, or they can have a mycorrhizal collaboration, and they are capable of, whether it's a pesticide like DDT or dyes, which I already mentioned, dye decolorization. This is to show your localization of enzyme. This year you will be doing peroxidase. So when you use guaiacol, you get a brown color. Wherever peroxidase is seen in the electrophoresis, there will be a brown band indicating the presence of peroxidases. So the roots are capable of rhizoremediation of a large number of substrates. And as I mentioned earlier, peroxidases are enzymes which are capable of utilizing phenols as a substrate. So my concluding remark would be, it's an amazing system to work with in terms of transformation, in terms of production of fine chemicals, in terms of producing macromolecules like proteins or therapeutic proteins, or in terms of phytoremediation studies. Then it is also a very interesting system for bioreactor design. So this concludes with Unit 3. Can you stop sharing the screen, the video, please?
Good morning, students.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay, so yesterday we have stopped on your methodology. We were discussing about the qualitative one. Am I right? We have discussed the qualitative method have to be exploratory, descriptive, plus it should be in inferential ways. Now, how does this qualitative actually represent the data? So we will see an example of a sign test method. Okay, see here. This is called a sign test method, where you just report positive or negative. So at the left side, there is a or metabolites containing like your alkaloids, anthocyanin, coumarins, imidines, and all that. And these are the tests available. So when a test is performed, you report it is present or not. And see the first test, alkaloid one. So this is a test for a plant drug. And when alkaloid was tested, a drag and drop was tested and Wagner reagent was used. So in both the case, it was negative. Means it states that the plant drug which was used do not shows the presence of alkaloid. Students, are you getting it?
Yes, ma'am.
Students, okay. So as we move more further, see for the amino acid. Now there is one amino acid test which used the like your amines and all that, and there was a presence, because see, amino acid is actually a primary metabolite. Okay, because it is a moiety from your protein. Proteins are primary one, so it will be present in most of, or we can say in maximum plant extract, it will be present. The amino acid, the carbohydrate, and your basically the protein things will be positive, but sometime they are absent. Clear? Now if we just localize for your secondary metabolite like your flavonoids and glycoside, look here, the Pew test, sodium hydroxide test. So these are the different tests which are performed. So you can just see it is reported as negative. Means the flavonoids and alkaloids both are absent in this plant extract. Now just look for the glycoside. Now glycosides here, one is reported as a positive, other is reported as a negative. That means glycosides are present, but it is in a certain form of a nativeness, or it can be in either way, where all glycosides are not being detected. So for this type of consideration, you have to make a new test for testing the glycoside. Clear? Now look for the polyphenols. Polyphenols is estimated by your forensical data, you know that, and it is here reported as a positive. So basically, this types of reportations or data analysis is known as sign test, and this is as a quality purpose. It is a detection type. So these types of tests are used for preliminary analysis. Clear? Can we go further? Students? आपको
Ma'am.
समझा नहीं है method?
Yes.
Okay. So as we go further, there is another methods. So methods can be like, it can be have a different features, or there are some of the points which have to be considered. So what are these points? First, the sample selection, which has to be logical. Second is your instrumentations, means what are the instrumentation used. Okay, so from where you can get the information of this instrument. First is a published data collection, and second is a research development instrument. Means when you analyze the literature review, you get a published data and reportation of different use of instrument for finding the data. So that is a method used for a published data collection. Okay, and another one is a research development instrument, where you actually be specify, like how in glycoside you get positive in one test and another was negative. So now you derive to another test and make more specific for glycosides. So that types of instrument or testing or method is called research developed instrument methods. Okay, because they are very specific to your targets. Next is your procedures. Now procedures have to be started with your pilot study, because if you don't know what is the data range or what is the estimated like your collecting data dispersion, then you can't specify or can't generalize your method. So by starting your pilot study, by making a triplicate data, you get a range of your data analysis, and then you replicate for data collection for making it a minimum 3 replicates. Now what is this triplicates data and what is this minimum triplicate data? It means when you go for a pilot study, you have to take minimum 3 test tubes. But when you go for a data collection of any method or instrument, there is a minimum criteria of triplicate. Means it should not be less than triplicate. It has to be more than that. So that is a different criteria, but it also depends on the resources, because sometimes the resources like the chemicals which are being a reagents, they're expensive. So for that type of test, you have to make limitations of making it triplicates. Okay. Now, as we go further, there is a quantitative method also. So in quantitative method, you actually make a sample selection based on your number and the size of the data you are taking, because the number play an important role. You know, you have done a biostatistical test where the number where maximum samples are taken, the standard deviation and the dispersion range of your data is very large, and the graph which you plot is not always bell shaped. Sometimes it is also a plateau type also. So that's why you have to make a selection of number or the size of sample in a quantitative one. Okay. Next is the procedures. Now procedures can be many type, and it actually starts with your pilot study, because see, when you go for your pilot study data, you have a range now, but what is the sample to be selected, what is the number of the sample you should study, is also taken from the idea from your pilot study. And by making that your pilot study, you make a data collection by deciding your sample size. Like if you have selected just 10 samples, or if you are taking just a 10 as a population, then you will take a 10 population plus making it a triplicates, means you are actually analyzing 30 samples. So that is your inferential from your pilot and from your sample size. Clear? Students, are you with me? Can I go further?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next is your data analysis part of selected. Now this data analysis is very important because it has to be a reliable one. It should be reproduced again. Now how this is used, I will just show you how the methods affect your data. Okay, so I am just sharing one sheet. I will just stop this share. Is the screen visible to you, students, now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now look at this. This is one Excel sheet where I will show you how to plot your central tendency and how to found your dependency of the data. Now look here. This is just these data are from your assignment only. So I am using the same data. This is the weight of your tomato one and this was the frequency. I have selected some of the data. So for plotting this bell-shaped graph, I have to select the data, go to the insert and make a selection of line graph. Okay, so I am taking a line graph selection. Now see here, this is a chart. Can you look a bell-shaped type? Students, are you able to see the chart?
Yes, ma'am.
See,
Yes, ma'am.
it is slightly a bell shape, means the weight is actually now distributed equally, but there is a slight variation because no standard deviation is present here. So now what is the error chance or what is the standard deviation, we will see. This is another set of data. Now see here, this is the amount of, like, imagine it is a X compound. We show a delta OD of this. Okay. Now just look at this OD. 0.12, 0.11, 0.13. Are they very similar or they are different from each other? Students, just look, tell me. See the range. It start from 0.1, it's end with 0.3 and 0.4. Very slight change, right? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now I will show you how to find like your mean and the standard deviation of this data. Okay, for easy purpose, I have just made a color selection of this. So now see here. Just look for this 25 microgram amount. This is a OD. Okay, I have to select a cell here and go to the formula section. In formula, if you are using the mean, average or standard deviation frequently, then it will come in recent used. But if you are not using, then go for more function and select statistical applications and go for all the tests. See here, you can get all this: average, your chi-square, your counting, your f-test, correlation, everything is present here. Okay. In more functions, statistical, you go for your t-test and all things. Clear, students? Are you understanding? Or should I go slow? Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now this is a example. So I am just making a selection. I am taking a average. Average means mean. And see, there is a pop-up of this. Now this pop-up is actually for the selection of your data. Okay. So I will select here and make a selection of the column which I want average. So now the triplicate of 25 is used. Okay. And I have selected the OD of 25 microgram. Now I will just make a enter and okay. See, this is 0.12 is a mean of 25 OD. Okay. Now for standard deviation, I will go again, select a cell, go to the recently used, because I have used it, I will go for standard deviation. Standard deviation is located in a short form STDEV. Okay, I select this, again pop up, I will select the same data because I need standard deviation of that same data. Okay, so I will just set OK and see. Now the amount in microgram of 25 microgram is OD is 0.12 and standard deviation is 0.01. Okay, just I am doing for everything because we need a data. See, I am just making a selection, going a average and making a mean. Can you look? See here, how fast I am calculating. Is it easy, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's more easier, but the use of the options is very important. Now I am done with my mean and average thing, so I am continuing with your standard deviation. So selection of the answer is very important, because if you select wrong tab, then you get a wrong result. Clear? For easy purpose, I made a color selection for you so that it will be easy. So I am just done with this. Just 2 more data. See. Okay. Can you see? I have got all the data of this test. Now this is a mean and this is a standard deviation. Now how to make a graph of this? Like how to find the correlation between your amount present and your delta OD. Like how you draw a standard graph in your experiment. You do a standard graph, right? In practicals, students?
Yes.
Yes. It is the same option. It is the same method. But here I am making a use of Excel. So this is the data now which have came. So I am just making a copy. But while pasting, if I just paste, like if I just Control V, the data is like this, because this is a calculated data. So while pasting, you have to select paste special, go for the values and then OK. See, now it is the same data. Students, are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So while pasting your calculated data, make paste special and value, not just directly Control V. Clear? So now this is the data. See, for each and everything, there is a 0.01 of standard deviation. Okay. Are you understanding this? Can we go further?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now this is for your central tendency, like how to find your average and standard deviation. Now the second thing is finding a correlation. Like when you are calculating what is the relation of height and breadth of the leaf. See, this is a correlation one. Okay. So if I go and select this data and plot as a XY, like I will go to insert, get a line graph. See here, this is a line graph. Now this line graphs is for both. So I have to specify the graph that what to plot as X and what to plot as Y, because I know which is dependent and I know which is independent. Okay. Now for now I am considering height as a dependent one. So dependent one कहाँ पे आएगा? X axis की Y axis? बताओ students. Dependent data कहाँ आएगा students? X और Y?
Y. Y.
Y. And independent one?
X.
Yes. Okay. So now I am now considering height as an independent. So I just select this graph, make a right click and see, here there are the options. Okay, now I will go to select data. In select data, see here, both the series are selected. Series 1 mean this height, series 2 means this breadth one. Okay, so as I am selecting your height as x1, series 2 should be plotted as y1. Am I right? So I will just remove this one and see, now just your breadth is plotted, and for your x-axis I will just edit here and make a selection of x1. Now see here. Okay, see, for each and every data, like for your length of your height or the length of the leaf, 9.1, 9.2, each breadth has been plotted. Are you able to see, students? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
If I want to find the association, then I have to select this line, and when the points are highlighted, I will right click and go to add thread line. Add thread line will help me to specify my graph. Like I want it linear, I want it exponential or logarithmic. It is my selection. So as I am comparing the association, correlation, so I am selecting a linear one. Okay. By selecting the linear, I will go to R square, like display R square means your correlation data. See, now I have selected display. Now see here, what is a correlation here? Are you able to see? I will just maximize that data.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now what is the R square here?
0.02.
0.02. So how it is correlated? Tell me.
Positively correlated.
Positively correlated, or it is nearly not a relation, because it is 0.00. स्केल याद है आपको कोरिलेशन का? It is very weakly positively correlated. आपने पढ़ा है ना? हाँ. Okay. So this was the example. Now, which we have calculated our microgram. ये जो हमने calculate किया ना, ये मैंने पहले से यहाँ पे डेटा आपके लिए लिखा हुआ है. So see, standard deviation क्या था हमारा? 0.01 for everything, right? See, for everyone it is 0.01. So I am just making a selection for 0.1 and I have just added here, and this is my standard deviation. Okay, so I am plotting a same line graph for this data. See here, same protocol. I am selecting the data, I am making an insert, going for line graph, and I am now specifying what is x and y. So as microgram is my x, I am removing y from y-axis and I am editing this. See. Okay. Now can you see a straight line here? Are you able to see?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I am selecting this line and making a thread line. Linear and your R square. Now look at this R square value. What is this R? How it is correlated?
It is strongly correlated.
Yeah.
Positively correlated.
Yeah. Now this is for 0.98. Okay. And if I go for the slope, means if I want to find the regression, then I will do the same thing. Go to the thread line and linear. Above the R square, there is called as display equation. I select that tab and now I have got my equation, the regression equation, where y is equal to mx plus c. Dikha students? Is it easy? Easy and faster? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now, one example for you, like how to select which data is more dependable. This is a test where you are getting a R square of 0.98 and this is a slope. Now, this same data was done again and this another set of data was seen. Okay. Means the experiment was repeated again and we have got new data, and now we will see what is the difference between these two data. Okay, so I am just making a selection, remove and editing the x1. See, this is a trend line. I am selecting and I am displaying the equation and the R square. Okay, and I am maximizing it. Now we will compare these two graphs and tell me which is good to follow. See, are you able to see both the graph?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now see at the R square value. It is 0.98 and it is 0.99. Means which is more correlated strongly? First one or second one?
Second one.
Second one. So this slope is more preferred than the earlier one because here the relation is very strongly one with the earlier, and secondly the data you get, like for example if I want to find a regression of, you see it is here 100 150, like I want to find a amount of 125, or I will say I have a OD of 0.23. If I get a delta OD of 0.23, how I will find this equation? What is the equation here? Y is your, I will just write M, X and C. Okay. This is your what is the equation? Y is equal to mx plus C. Okay. Am I right? For when your amount is independent and your OD is dependent one, then Y is calculated because I am considering amount as X and OD as Y. Okay. So I am using this equation. Now, if I want to find X, then I have to calculate Y minus C whole divided by M. Am I right, student? आपको ये समझा मैंने इक्वेशन कैसे डिराइव किया?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a second. Okay. So I am now making a use of this equation. So I have my Y. M I will take from this. Now what is M here? Students, tell me what is M?
0.0374.
Yeah. And your C value is in positive. It is 0.0768. Okay. So what was the equation of mine? I have to make a minus from your C, right?
Y
I
minus
have to
C.
make Y minus C. So I will just select the cell where I want data. I will make a equal to sign. I will select the cell. I will enter minus. I will select another cell and enter. So this is a value. Okay. Next is by dividing this data by M. So I'm making selection by equal to the cell, divide by this, enter. Now see. Can you see, students?
Yes, ma'am.
So these are the criteria where you actually found your X and Y, and plus the regression can be found easily. So these are the methods which can be used. Now I am stopping here because I want to continue that method part again. Is the slide visible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we have completed this thing. So now what is a factor actually affect your designs? First, the sample designing, or we can say sampling. Third is a data collection, execution of your research, your analysis of data, because while analysis we have found that when the R square is more strongly, then we prefer that thing, right? हम second data ज़्यादा prefer करेंगे because it is more strongly correlated, not the first one. So the analysis of data actually plays a very important role. Okay. Next is the hypothesis framing. Now, the hypothesis framing actually helps when you have to apply Z, T or ANOVA. Okay, because you have to actually test your method or found is your data collected from the method is important, or it is significantly different, or it is experimentally positive or not. Okay. And the interpretation part, because while interpreting the data, like you know what does R square value means, right? You are able to analyze if it is more like 0.98 is lesser than 0.99. So that is the interpretation you actually learn from the basic study. You have done the calculation, so you know what is the important of that value, or what is the important of that association. So the interpretation part is actually done with the help of all your basic knowledge, all your conceptual data, and all the facts you have learned for finding your method or the data collections or making the analysis of data. Clear, students? Can we go further?
Yes, ma'am.
Students, okay. Now we are done with the data processing, but what are the data processing stages you should remember? First, you have to make a collection of data, the preparation, like how you are going to collect and all that, and analyze the input, your processing, your output and interpretation, like how I have collected the data, I have input in the Excel, I have processed the analysis, and then I've got the output, like how I got my 0.98, and I know the interpretations. So these are the very basic steps for processing of your data. Clear? Last is the storage, because if you're not saving your data, you can't able to compare the data with the new or with the new modified one. Like how I estimated the R square for the first, which was 98, and the another was 0.99. So I was able to compare my data because I actually saved my data 0.98. Okay. So that's why you should always save your data which you have processed plus which you have analyzed, so that in future if you need a comparison input or a comparative study, you can just correlate or you can just compare. Okay. So as we go further, there are the methodology important points which should be taken care when you are writing the steps for a report or for making a like a data writing of the project. Okay. First, the trustworthiness. Now what is trustworthiness? It is actually when you are getting a OD of 0.11, then you should write 0.11. And if you are getting a like a very difference range, like for a triplicate, If you are getting a 3 test tube of same test, you are getting 0.11, you are getting 0.17, and you are getting 0.15, which are very far to each other. But writing the same data is the trustworthiness. If you manipulate, if you adjust your OD with your 0.11 and writing it as 0.12 and 0.13, that is not a trustworthiness. So you should report the data as it is, which you get from the method. Okay. Next is validity. Now validity is actually observed or seen when you do the experiment for many times. Like if I've done the test for a triplicate, am I making a replica of it again? Like I'm performing the experiment for a 5 time or 4 time or 10 times. Then getting the same range of data, getting the same dispersion area of the data shows the validity of the test. Because if all the data coming is near to 0.11 and 0.12, then it shows that my data is well defined, plus my method is very dependable because it is not showing any error, and I am getting the data delta OD at the same range. So that is a validity of your methodology. Clear? Next is your statistical analysis. Now in statistical analysis, your standard error and your bar graph, like if I just stop this share and I go to your slide where I was showing you the graph. Can you see this graph, student?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I am just making error of 0.02. I'm just guessing it. Okay. Now how to show a standard error of this data? I will just select the data, see, and after selecting the right, there are format data series. Now this format data series will give you every option, like title the slide, title your graph, title your x-axis, title your y-axis, all the series. See here, it will show you everything. See, can you see here? Students, is the screen visible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is one option. Another option is selecting this. There is a chart design option. In there, you can just go to add chart element, and in that thing, you get a error bar. Now, error bar can be of different things, because it can be on a percentage based, it standard deviation, or a calculated like a computational error also. So I am giving a standard deviation because I have gotten my SD. Okay, so I will just go for more error bar option, and see here there is one called as custom. I will select custom because I have my data. So I will select custom, I will say specify value, and I will select my SD value. So for positive also I will select the same data, and for negative also I will select the same data. Okay, because we report SD as a plus and minus. याद है ना आपको, आप लिखते टाइम प्लस एंड माइनस लिखते हो? Yes,
Yes,
or
ma'am.
no? Yes.
ma'am.
So I will just make a okay, and now see here. There is a error bar, but it is not visible. I will just maximize it, and I will make a line. Just a second. Because due to line, okay. Now this error bar is visible to you. Students, can you see this I-shaped structure?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is the error bar you get for your given value. The above is a plus and the lower is a minus. So I have just entered a random value of 0.2. So that's why it's showing me error bar. So lesser the error bar, more the dependability of the data, and it is more acceptable method for the test. That is an important thing. Okay. So we will go again to the slide. We have completed. Okay. We were on the ethical issues now. Now, what is this ethical issue in data? First, the manipulation of data is not allowed. Secondly, the standard error. When you get a standard error of like the standard error normal limitation which is accepted is 10% range. Means if I am getting a value of 1 for data, then my standard error which is accepted for any dependable data is 10%. Then 10% of 1 is 0.1. Means for plotting 1 and making a standard deviation of 0.1 is dependable. But if I change my data from 0.1 to like slightly lesser, or if I am getting a standard deviation of 0.3 on 1, which is not a dependable data, and I am changing it to 0.1 for getting a validity of the data, then that is not allowed. That is ethically incorrect. So the manipulation of the data or the input, like we are changing the values, that is not acceptable, and that is a very important criteria, because when it has to reproduce or when we want to replicate the result again, then that time it is clear that you have changed your data and that method can't be used for your target topic. Clear? Students, are you with me? Can I go further?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As we go now, ethical issues, there is an interpretation of data on the basis of your all concept, like how we discussed earlier. But your interpretation of data is also consider the slightly generalization. Means you have to actually add other points also to make a support or to make a validity of your data. Okay. Now, the validity, verification and evaluation is a factor which will actually certify is this method is important or is this method was very best suited for your test. So all the time this three part or this three character is checked, and this three actually tells that your methodology is best suited or not. Okay. Now we have done with the methods, you have analyzed the data. Now what about the result? How to present your result? Now there are some of the characters, like how I have shown my graph with a line graph, plus I have reported that standard bar data. That is also a sort of presentation of my result. But there are slight different criteria where I will show the result in different aspects. Okay, so we will just go further and look what are the result features. First, introduction. Now in introduction, it is not that you have to introduce your project again. No, you have to just write what are you assuming or what are you aiming in the result, nothing else. Next, drawing the result. Like from that graph, now I am saying the correlation or the association between the amount and your concentration of OD, or I can say the concentration of your X and Y with the OD is 0.98 or 0.99. So I am making a result from that graph. So that is called drawing of result. Or if I say that sign test method, where I just said that the alkaloid was absent, polyphenol was present. So I am stating a statement on the basis of my observation, on the basis of that plus and minus. So that's why I am drawing the result from my data analysis. That is called drawing the result. Now, result from data collection is different slightly, because when you go for data collection can be of a single sample or it can be of 100 sample. So if I'm just plotting a graph of a single, then I am making a result. But if I'm making a comparative study, I am making a comparative result and then going to analyzing, then it make a result of data collection, because I am comparing each and every data set of the result. Okay. Now your pilot study play a better role, because pilot study will state you the statement saying the range, because for reporting the result you should always report the range of the data, also the standard error or the standard deviation which occurs is specified on your pilot study. Also it shows as your range or dispersion. That's why. Now what is this missing data? Missing data is a thing when you go for data analysis and sometime you are not able to get your triplicate data. You just have a 2 data value and you are not able to report the third data. So that time you should report that the graph, or we can select the sample A or B was missed with the data. So third triplicate data was the average of first 1 and 2. Clear? Are you understanding, students? How to interpret your missing data?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for missing data, there is an option, and there is like a slight change. Not we can all time apply, but you can apply. But when it is just for a data analysis, not for observational. Like if I go for sign test, if I have not detected the test, or if I have like failed to write the result, it was positive or negative, then I can't report that test. So I have to exclude that value. I can't report the observational thing. But for data analysis, if I have two duplicate data and for triplicate I need, then I can make an average for like a trend if I know the trend. Okay. Next is your data analysis, which we have discussed, the collection and the conversion of the data. Now what is this conversion? Now, whenever you go for any research paper reading, you will see all the data are reported in grams and mg. Right? Yes or no, students? आपने नोटिस किया था कि नहीं? हाँ ना? Students?
Yes,
Okay, I will specify you. See, whenever you dissolve any solute or any chemical compound in the solvent and you go for the analysis of the experimentations, then you actually use the volume in ml, mul, or like a different way. But when the data is reported for a writing, then you are not reporting any volume. You have to report weight, because volume may differ, because while selecting you can take extra volume and it may affect your standard deviation. But when you specify amount, means if I have dissolved mg by ml, that means I have dissolved 1000 mg in 1000 ml, or 1 mg in 1 ml, or 100 mg in 100 ml. So that is the meaning of mg by ml. So it is stating that the quantity, the limitation, or the compound I have used, I have given it a criteria where I am using 100 mg for 100 ml. So if I used 1 ml, then 1 ml will contain 1 mg. So that is a reporting. So conversation of data is very important. You have to always use the weight value to report, not your volume value. Volume value are not accepted. Okay. Next is generalization of the result and your reproducibility. Now, what is this generalization of result? It is actually when you state a reference or when you state a conclusion for your test, you go for a statement saying that the compound X is present this much in this plant. So you actually extrapolating it and you are saying that all amount, all the selected or the calculated amount is present in the plant, but you have actually calculated for 1 gram and you are making a detail with the whole plant, or we are just making a generalization of the result. That is a main factor. It is used when you are concluding or when you are making a inference of the result of the data method or the analysis. Okay, students, are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now what are the slight outline which you can use for the summary? First, the introduction. Now, in conclusion, introduction should be very precise. You don't have to write all the data which you have used in your entire review. You have to just write why you have used this plant, this method, and why this protocol. Just these 3 things. Next, the interpretation of the study. Now, the interpretation of the study depends on the method you have choose. It can be qualitative, it can be quantitative, it can be inferential based, or it can be a statistical based, anything. So, depending on your study, you interpret, okay, and you state the limitation of the study. Means by stating that, for example, remember that glycoside example which we have taken in the starting. So in that glycoside, one test was present and another was not. So for that study, I will state the limitation here that the glycosides may be not in a native form or maybe not in a correct way in a solubility. So that's why it shows absence or presence. So these types of statements will help you to specify the limitation of the study, and you can actually say that the more detailed study of that glycoside is needed. Okay, so that is a limit. You are specifying the limitation of your protocol or your data. Now, recommendations. Recommendations is actually you are saying for the further research. When you are not able to find what was that glycoside present, then you will say the another method XYZ can be used to study the more native form of that glycoside. So you are stating a reference, you are stating a recommending a method for analyzing that glycosides. So that is a conclusion part. You say, you inference. Okay, now implications is finding your value to imply, like how you found your correlation, you have got your slow value, then you can just imply that if this amount is present, then that much can be OD, or that OD will refer to that much amount of compound. So that is the implications of your test, and you can actually say here that this method can be used to find the quantification of compound X from the plant species. Okay, and you will just state the conclusion stating this by saying that the method XYZ shows the presence of dash amount in the plant species or in the plant. Clear? Did you understand, students? Students, are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so for now, we will stop here. So Namrata ma'am,
स्टूडेंट पढ़ रहे हैं, अभी टेस्ट है ना.
please stop the recording.
Yes.